You have to trust in your divine guidance, that true magnetic self that is already inside of you.
The more authentic you can get with yourself, learn your authenticity, operate from that place, wholeheartedly do the work to peel the layers, you will manifest everything you want in life, period. From To Be Magnetic, this is the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacy Phillips.
And your host, Jessica Gill.
As the leading destination for neural manifestation, we dispel the woo-woo in order to help you create real, tangible results based on neuroplasticity, psychology, epigenetics, and energetics. Our goal is to normalize the practice of manifestation and empower you to get into the driver's seat of your life in order to manifest the experiences, relationships, and things that most align with your authenticity. And by pressing play, the process begins.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Expanded. Jessica here. I hope you all are having a fabulous week. I wanted to kick off today's episode with a deep inhale breath together. So wherever you are in the world listening to this, just take a moment, take a pause, and take a deep inhale. And exhale. Maybe let go of anything you've been holding on to from the week and allow yourself to just feel guided and held as you listen to the episode today. I want to try to start implementing a few more grounding openings to the podcast to help everyone's mood and nervous system feel really grounded before they jump in. One note to anyone in the TBM universe. So we still have our manifestation challenge going on right now. It will be open until February 29th at midnight PST. So if you've been thinking about it, wanting to join, wanting to jump back in, finalize the challenge, now's your time to do so. We have a little bit over a month left where you'll have access. So be sure to get in there and check in. We've had some incredible manifestations come through. I had a massive one come through really early on in the new year, actually, and a lot of really good expander tests, especially on my home front search. So lots to update you guys on there in the coming episodes. Today, we are diving into a topic that has been requested for a long time and really understanding what it means when we feel behind in life, or when we feel like our manifestation is just not coming fast enough. The root of both of these things are a desperation energetic. Now, I want to be mindful to make a note that as we are discussing this desperation energetic in the episode, we are referring to when you have your basic needs met and you still have that frantic energy that you don't have that thing in time. You're not getting your job fast enough. Your life isn't progressing at the pace you wanted it to progress. It's this sort of internal anxiety that is permeating through you, really sensitive to the timing of how things unfold. We are not talking about desperation energetics when people are in real life dangerous situations or situations that are compromising getting their basic needs met. So that's going to be a whole different categorization of this energetic. So I just want you to keep that in mind, that we are talking to the people that have their basic needs cared for and they are still having that dogpaddling, perfectionistic, regret, and desperation energy come up. We give you a protocol on how to navigate when you are in this dynamic. And it's also a really great episode as a reference point. So if you are ever in this dynamic, if you are sitting there being like, why is my manifestation not there? I'm doing all the right things. Listen to this episode. Let this be your reminder. Use the tools that we offer in here. This will be your roadmap out of that and into your internal worthiness in this moment in time as you continue to manifest. Enjoy.
And now, a word from our partners.
One of the number one questions I have gotten on Instagram in the last few months has been, oh my gosh, your hair has grown so insanely. What are you doing? It looks amazing. A, thank you. B, it's Actinaker. I'm telling you guys, once I understood that your scalp has a microbiome of its own, and when you can keep a healthy scalp, your hair can actually flourish and grow and be as healthy and shiny as possible. So, Actinaker is a scalp care brand. They're absolutely science-backed, super clean. Their founder, Helen Reevy, is a board-certified trichologist who has really been studying and understand the scalp at a whole nother level and has been on this mission to transform hair care and really get to the root of what is going on with our hair so it can flourish. And two of the products I've been using the most in the last year, which I think have contributed to my healthy hair, has been their cold press scalp detox. You've probably heard me talk about it before. It is a little scalp treatment that I'll put on. Usually if I'm prepping for a workout, I might put it on and just leave it on 20 minutes. Or if I'm going to get in the shower in a bit, I'll put it on about 20 minutes before that. And it helps break down all of the buildup and impurities that is on your scalp. It is getting rid of anything that doesn't need to be there, old bacteria, things that are standing in the way of natural hair growth. And it is delivering vitamins into each of your hair follicles to help make them flourish. So that is a huge one. And then the second one I've been using is their BHA salicylic acid scalp exfoliator. I use this once a week. I am someone that has always had an oily scalp, no matter how much and how often I wash my hair or how little I didn't wash my hair. It's like a day goes by and then it was greasy, or even at the end of the day I showered, it was greasy, but not until this exfoliator treatment. So I'll use it, like I said, once a week. I'll put it on, leave it on for 20 minutes, and then hop in the shower right after. Really, I'll rub it in deeply. And this helps get anything that maybe needs a little bit more care, a little bit more to help rebalance your oil glands there and get anything that any loose flakes or any extra sebum or oil or anything that might be going on there. It's really going to support you in that regard. They have so many different products, any kind of hair type you have out there, they have something for you. I highly recommend checking them out. They are one of my favorites. And anyone that asks me, what is the hair system you're using? This is it.
And we have a special code for you today where you can receive 20% off your purchase at Actinaker. You can go to actinaker.com and put in the code TBM20 for 20% off. Or you can check the link in the show notes and in checkout, put in the code TBM20 for 20% off.
All right, on to the episode.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Are we allowed to, I feel like, how long can we keep saying that? I feel like people keep coming back on that one. I say it until the end of January.
I say it until next December. No, just kidding.
Every day's a new start.
Exactly.
Happy New Year to you too. And for context, Jessica's just back on her feet after a really intense flu.
I feel like everyone's curious your temperature check on the year thus far, but I feel like everyone is like, there's that feeling of like, okay, I want to implement new systems. I want to try new things. I want to have a new practice, but there's a bit of like slowness. There's a bit of like, we're still in winter. We're still in cocoon season. Let's sort of keep reflecting, keep refining, but we don't have to take that massive action.
That's where I'm at. And I honestly feel like I've conditioned myself to become that because I was such a product of mainstream media and Cosmo magazine and all of those things growing up. And then when I started to find spirituality and understanding seasons and living rhythmically, God, this was probably like 10 years ago, I really stopped the whole New Year, New You thing and really honored winter and really honored how to flow with the energy. Like even the light is so different this time of year. Obviously, if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, you're probably feeling like gung-ho New You. But for the people who are in the Northern Hemisphere like us, and I even look at the light in Topanga right now and the weather, and we're in a really mild climate. And I find myself not only on the front of the new year reorganizing, but also like getting into nesting and pregnancy and like, wanting to just really change systems to get prepared for like how intense that postnatal vortex is going to be with 2 kids, that I'm actually doing it so much more precisely, the refining, so much more with ease. I even today did my medicine cabinet, and when I say medicine cabinet, it's where all of my beauty products are and stuff. And I'm just like, whoa, 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 what's in here that we're not using that we can donate? And I'm just doing it in all facets of my life, finances, just everywhere. And I think I'm taking the part that we did in the challenge deeper. I feel like in the challenge, it was so much more energetic, subconscious space. And right now, I'm really going through all of the physical. So I guess the best thing I can say to people is like, do it with ease. It's kind of like your cycle. It's kind of like the ocean, like feel into what's right, going with the season, feeling into the light, not pushing through like everything in this work, programming. Just listen to what's authentic to you, what's being pinged to you right now, what is right in front of you that matters. And that's the next step. So I would say honor the cocoon phase. And if you're in Southern Hemisphere, like on the beach, living it up, like have a smoothie, you have all the light in the world, just really go for it.
I think that's such good wisdom. This kind of brings us into our theme today, which is really around both feeling behind in life, feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't get ahead with career, home, kids. Maybe it's your purpose. And this energy of desperation that pops up. It can also pop up when we're like, why is our manifestation taking so long? Or I want that manifestation now. I feel so impatient and I want to get into surrender. But if I really look at my energy, it's in dog paddling. And I think a lot of new people, when they first get to this work, they get so excited and they start to see some manifestations come through. And then some of the bigger ones take longer. And this desperation starts to seep in. So we wanted to talk about how to navigate the desperation energetic. What is it? How does it function? And how can we navigate it with a bit more compassion versus, oh, I can't be, don't throw it into your shadow either.
Yeah.
The Psychology Lexicon describes desperation as a complex emotional and cognitive response characterized by a sense of urgency and a strong desire for relief from emotional pain or challenging situation. Desperation can have a profound impact on mental and emotional well-being, affecting various aspects of your life. If this emotional state intensifies, it also correlates with our behavior. So it becomes a cycle. We feel desperate, thus our behavior becomes desperate, thus we receive desperate results, and the cycle continues and continues. And I wanted to call it out from sort of a psychology lens to kick off, because when we really understand why desperation is coming up, it is a strong desire from relief from emotional pain and challenging situations. If we are feeling desperate for our manifestation or feeling like we're behind in life and we don't have any time to do the things we want to do, it's that emotional pain that's coming up. And the desperation is almost like an indicator of we want to change and we have to find the solution. How do you see desperation with manifestations? We've talked about that desperation energetic so much, but for the new person, how would you distill it down?
And I'm glad that we're really just focusing on these two topics because I understand this energetic so well personally. I'll just start off by saying a lot of people who may be listening may even be older than I am at this point. And they're like, oh, this woman's in her late 30s. She's arrived. I can't even take advice from this. But there is no age limit or ageism out of this energy when you are in it, because the universe of manifestation just doesn't work in relationship to age. Age is all programming through society. If we didn't have any context for that, we would never use it to compare things. So, but I remember from a very young age, we've talked about this, knowing that I was meant for something great and knowing that I was meant to have a lot more than I had in my upbringing in childhood, knowing so clearly that I was meant to have a big life. However, for so many years, the life that I thought I was meant to have and the accomplishments that I was meant to accomplish and basically the checklist reflected wounding. It reflected wounding to be loved and to be recognized finally to be seen by my parents, by my family, by my cousin, all the things that I didn't feel like I had. And so the very first thing in this energetic I want to talk about is if we are not manifesting from our authentic self, we will remain in this energy for a really long time. It's that simple, like at the base. So often when we're in this space of desperation, oh, this manifestation isn't coming, I'm behind in life. The things we may be calling in, even if it's something by divine right, we will have and deserve, say, partnership. Most often than not, if you have truly been doing this work, not toe dipping, not denial, because whenever I run into the person or I get the DM, or the person on the street and they're like, this has actually changed my life. And these are the things that it has changed. And it's like this insane list. They aren't toe dipping and they're not lying to themselves. So if you have been doing this work for a while and you are in this energy and you aren't having these life-changing experiences and manifestations, two things are happening. You're toe dipping or there's a sense of denial. And do we have a full episode on that, if I remember, Jessica, where
Yeah, how to be honest with yourself. We'll
how to
link
be
it in the
honest?
show notes. Yeah.
Yes, because that's a really important thing that if you have been doing this work for a while, not new to it, not just starting out, not just figuring out your authenticity, but you've been doing this for a while and you've really been digging in and you're not seeing that stuff happen, you need to listen to that episode because that's energetic number one to desperation and feeling behind in life. I've seen it over and over and over again. And so, even from my own personal experience, yes, everything arrived. It started to arrive for me from 30 to now. But up until that point, I was always in my younger 20s, I was dating older. I was surrounded by successful people, and I was broke, waitressing, totally not where I thought I was going to be. I was watching all of my friends and people like lock down the relationship, have the kids, have success in their career. And it was just not happening for me until 27. I woke up and started actually living out this process. Like 25, getting it and implementing things, by 27 to 30, perfecting. So the fact that from 30 to now, I've been able to truly manifest everything that I've wanted for myself, it's because of this work. And so we'll start to dig into these energetics more in manifestation, but I understand so well each of these energetics personally, having been in those situations of being so fucking broke, so fucking lonely, totally not where I want to be in my career, not being recognized and feeling like my family and everybody like really thinks I'm a failure because not only did I not go to school, but I was, pursuing acting. And I mean, I remember the feelings that come with this so deeply. And I can tell you that truly at the bottom of it all, it was wanting things out of life that were from wounding to complete me. And it was not being honest with myself of what I truly, authentically wanted, working with the universe from an authentic space. So those are the two things while you're listening to this episode that you're going to want to be looking at in your own life. Where are you desiring, calling in, wanting from wounding, external validation to complete you? And where aren't you being honest with yourself from your true authenticity? Because once you have those nailed down and you're just following these steps, the rest is history. It happens maybe gradually, but the rest is history.
There's also this feeling of running down the worst case scenario rabbit hole when people are in the desperation energetics. So many people, when their FU fund is drying up and they're getting close and they're like, oh, but what if like nothing comes through at all? And oh my gosh, this is my last dollar and I can't do this. And your brain sort of starts to spiral. And it's interesting because if you think about the behavior and the thoughts that are going through your mind when you're feeling that desperation, where you're like, God, I really want the thing, it's akin to a trauma response. And so the best way when I was going through, I was like, oh, let's look at our archetypes because I'm curious if people start following their certain archetypes on the wounded side when they're in their desperation energetic. So, first and foremost, you have to admit you're in a desperation or dog paddling state.
That's part of the getting honest with yourself.
Yeah, you got to get honest with yourself and say, I'm feeling desperate. I'm feeling dog paddling. I am looping and ruminating and freaking out about when the timeline is going to come through. I'm not feeling in surrender. That's step one. Sometimes people won't even admit to them. They're like, I'm in surrender. I don't care when they come through. It doesn't matter. But truly deep down, they're in like a elevated state. So step one, like Lacey was saying, get really honest that you're in this state. And it's okay. Just admitting that you're in that state is like half the battle. And then start thinking about your manifestation blind spots. We have another episode on this. We'll link it. We also have it in the manifestation challenge, which is open right now, and in the pathway membership. But these three archetypes tend to pop up that block people's manifestations. I think they also pop up with this desperation energy. So the dreamer is that first archetype that is fantasizing about the future. They are someone that is really attached to the external things in life that will validate them. So when they are in desperation, they can do one of two things. They can be fantasizing about the future. Like you were saying, when I was really young, I knew I had a big life. So instead of taking those little actions towards the big life, which felt so scary and so unknown, you were like, I'm just going to sit and dream about it and dream about it and dream about it and think about it. And then almost like a freeze response, not taking any action towards it. It's like, let's just feel that I'm supposed to be there. You know, it's the epitome of like the spiritual bypass manifestation. It's like, I'll just get into the vortex and think about this dream mega mansion without actually understanding, do I want this thing? What does that bring me? What am I actually doing in my real life? Having that reality check. Or it could also result in a flight response. So I didn't realize this, but of the flight response, panic, worry, rumination, and perfectionism can pop up. So that means your flight is you worrying. You're just worrying that you're not there yet. You're ruminating, you're overanalyzing the dynamic, you're putting the thing you want on a pedestal and examining, okay, well, they didn't answer here, so I'm going to have to text this person this way, and then maybe they'll go on a date with me. That over analytic brain comes in to distance yourself from the pain of not having it yet. How do you see that play out, Lacey?
When somebody is in the desperation, or I haven't arrived yet, or these different energetics we're talking about, they're not in their power. And when I say power, it's not a egotistical dynamic. It means you're not comfortable with your authentic self. You're not owning it, and you're not filtering through that, through your authentic code, which is one of the key core steps in our process. You're not trusting that your authentic self is enough, and that what it desires is enough to say no. That is surrender. Like when we are really, really getting to know our authentic self, we're getting comfortable with it, and we're operating from it, which is so scary. There's so many onion layers to peel to do that. And most importantly, that we're answering from it. That's when we're setting boundaries from that place, and we're passing tests. And we'll get into another archetype, not in the fashion of protecting ourselves and having control, but from a really confident place. So when I say you're not in your power, that's what I'm talking about. That's what that desperation energy is. Everything you're talking about in the dreamer archetype, I mean, the biggest high level important thing to understand about it is most often than not, you're seeking status to have external validation in an effort to feel complete, which will never bring your manifestation. And just like the longer you sit in that and you're not honest with yourself, you're just going to spiral in the same cycles over and over and over again. Whether you're in fight or flight, you're just going to continue in that space.
And I was talking to a friend not that long ago, and they were talking about their goals in life down the line. And they're like, I just want that big success. I want a big success in whatever field they're in. And I was like, let's get curious about that. First of all, what deems it big? Is it the number of lives you touched? Is it clout and recognition? Are you written up in magazines? Like, why that big success? Why do you have to have that public win, as they were saying? And it all comes back to that external validation. It's like, well, if I had the public success, then, and they kind of justify it away. They're like, well, if I got this, then I would get other opportunities and I'd work with the best. I'm like,
That's not being honest with yourself.
right.
That's not authentic.
And I was like, that's where you have to go after those things then. Stop trying to manipulate the system and say, I want to work with really talented, creative people. Don't say, I want a big win, so then those people work with me.
Mhm.
Get really clear on why you want that thing. And I think this happens a lot is like, we try to trick ourselves that it's not ego, it's not the external thing, but really when we sit down with it, I almost wish I could like give a sensation out to everyone of what it feels like in your body when it's like, I would do this if literally not one person gave a shit in the world.
That's confidence. That's in your power and your authenticity. And that's where all those big wins come.
Mhm.
They magnetize to that because it's authentic.
So I think for the person out there who's like, okay, I think I might be in the dreamer. I tend to freeze and just daydream or flight and kind of ruminate and overanalyze and put this external thing on a pedestal. Start to pull apart your worth from whatever you want. Your manifestation isn't going to make you more worthy. Your manifestation isn't going to make your life magically better just because it's there. So it's like, the journey is the destination. Take every day, every step, and integrate your authenticity here and now with what is surrounding you. And everything else will become the cherry on top because that's will pull you into that surrender. And attend to the inner child part of you that is having a real trauma response pop up, a real fear, a real feeling of scarcity. When that pops up, that is where you go in and nurture. You
Yeah.
don't need to shut it down or shame it or say it shouldn't be there. Just say like, oh, wow, my inner child is really fucking scared of not having this external thing to validate me. Let me get curious about that.
And let's face the worst case scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Because once we get to the root of like, what is my biggest fear if I don't get this thing or have this thing, I think of myself, right? At my like lowest moments in my 20s of being in my apartment with cockroaches, hardly making any money from waitressing, and my friends are all becoming famous and all the things that I'm calling in from a status external place. I never had the opportunity to sit there and be like, what if I had to move home? What if I had, let's just go to the root and get to the bottom of it. Because once you face all of that, we have a whole body of work from the last mid-year challenge on that worst case scenario. Like once I look at the worst case scenario, it gives you more licensing to actually learn who you authentically are and not give a shit, and to start operating from a place from your authenticity in your worth, like we were talking about, in your power. That is, I believe, one of the keys. If you can just like go down that rabbit hole and face, let's just look. If all of my greatest fears came to life, because I think that that's also something, pending on one's wounding from their past, and level of abuse, et cetera. But, if someone has the support or whatever, I believe that that's where you can gain a lot of freedom from the fight or flight. Because when our brain's in those states and when our body's operating in that, it's just looping. It's not looking at the full details of why. We're not sitting there going like, why am I feeling like this? Like you were saying, like investigate, get to the root. What's the wounding? What's the inner child? Once you face that, the fight or flight can hit the road. You know what I mean? Because it's like, oh, okay, this is what the worst case scenario looks like. No problem. Now, why don't we go do the authentic code? Why don't we start to operate from authenticity? And if there's one thing somebody takes away from this podcast episode, the more authentic you can get with yourself, learn your authenticity, operate from that place, wholeheartedly do the work to peel the layers, to operate from your authentic self, you will manifest everything you want in life, period.
Speaking of manifestations, one major manifestation that has come through for me recently is Bond Charge's infrared PEMF mat. Their PEMF mat, which stands for Pulse Electromagnetic Field, is a magnetic energy mat that sends energy waves to work with your body's natural magnetic field and improve your overall well-being. Now, I originally heard of PEMF mats back in the day. I used the first one at Lacy's Forest Retreat House, and I kind of didn't really think it was going to do anything at first. And when I laid on this mat, I'm telling you, my whole body just relaxed. My nervous system relaxed, and I fully was able to calm down. Fast forward a few years later, one of our absolute favorite companies, Bon Charge, has launched their own PEMF mat, and it is fully loaded with all the best biohacking techniques you can imagine. So not only do they have multiple frequency settings, one for delta waves to improve deep sleep, one for grounding and earthing that is in the frequency of Schumann's resonance, which is the Earth's magnetic field frequency, one for alpha waves to increase calm creativity, one for beta waves for logical thinking, conscious thought, or meditation, and one that cycles through all four to really align all different parts of your body. But that's not all. They also have red, near infrared, and far infrared light wave frequencies. You've heard me talk about this before, but red light therapy can be so impactful for muscle soreness, tension, pain in the body, detoxification, and so many more things. It is also packed with tourmaline gemstones, germanium gemstones, and amethyst crystals, which all help to balance your mood, keep you calm, activate spiritual awareness, open intuition, and attract positive ions from your body to keep you in that balanced state. Like I said, this thing is fully loaded. So once we received it, we unloaded it into our living room, and it honestly hasn't left the floor because I find myself jumping on it multiple times a day. When I want to meditate before the start of my day, or when I'm needing to process and do a DI, it helps to take me deeper, calm my body, calm my nervous system. It is so good for meditation practices. It just helps you go a lot deeper. And when you are needing grounding breaks throughout the day, it is fantastic. So if you are interested in trying Bon Charge's new infrared PEMF mat, you can use the code MAGNETIC, that's all caps, MAGNETIC for 15% off. Again, that's magnetic, MAGNETIC for 15% off. Or you can go to boncharge.com/pages/magnetic and check out some of the other incredible biohacking low EMF products that Bon Charge has to offer.
Okay, and now going into the discerner. So this is a person who can be very rigid in their thinking when they're in the wounded sign, very cut and dry. They might, cut someone off early or say no, like no is their favorite word, but sometimes it's a no a bit too early because it's out of protection. But when they get into that desperation sense, they are in almost like a fight or flight, right? So I see it as the flight is their perfectionism, cutting something off early, showing up with judgment towards others, unable to look at their side of the street. They're like, no, it must be a problem with them. I don't want to look at it. I also see it coming up with the fight response where the problem is, well, I can't do that because this criticism on someone else, all the blame is external because it's a bit easier to offload it to an external source of being the root of the problem versus actually sitting with the like, wow, I feel really out of control. I don't like that I can't figure out my next step in career or my finances. And in this moment, I feel out of control. And so the remedy for this person is being able to sit with that, whether that's sitting with a therapist, if it's feeling really, really intense, but sitting with that sensation of like, okay, in this moment, I feel out of control. I'm not out of control in general. There are solutions that can present to me. But once you sort of like let the wall come down a little bit, you can acknowledge the feeling beneath it. And then you can start to have those creative solutions of like, okay, maybe I should try this, or maybe I could try that. You start getting creative, experimenting with it instead of staying stuck in the desperation.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, with this one specifically, the real highlight that I think you talked about is everything one does from this place is to protect themselves, because in childhood, they had a very out of control environment, or they didn't have safe caretakers that really protected them. So the effort to say no to everything and walk away before they get hurt, or all of the stuff that this particular archetype does, again, it's someone who's not authentic with themselves. Because when you're in an integrated space, you don't have that feeling of reactive, radical behavior. You actually come from, again, a place in your power, in your worth. How does it feel? It feels, it's not hasty. It's being able to kind of see, like you said, the full picture, and operate again from, well, yeah, but what are my authentic needs? And what's this person's authentic needs, or this opportunity's authentic needs? They don't align. And it's not a like, see you later, bad text, ghosting. But, that's all, again, reactive behavior for protection.
Yeah, I love that you also named that all of these responses are that protection part. And I think the more we can see them as that, the more we can have some compassion for why they're showing up, even if we don't like the results of them.
Yeah, agreed.
And for that last archetype, the empathizer, now this is someone who will neglect their own needs out of fear of putting themselves out there, thinking that they won't be safe if they really go for that thing. So you can imagine in a desperation response, this person will likely caretake, nurture, find busy or numbing behavior that is so opposite from the route they need to be going, because that is how they regain control. That's how they feel safe again when they feel desperate in a state of panic. They're like, well, what I know is codependency. What I know is numbing behaviors. What I know is this, and that's going to bring me comfort, when actually taking that one step through fear to put themselves out there, or one step towards an action plan, is actually going to give them more comfort, because it'll help move them out of that desperation sense. And one other thing I just want to name, I know I've been talking about these trauma responses, but just to give like a little overview. So basically, when someone, I'm sure you guys have heard this before, but when someone has an emotional traumatic response, their nervous system can respond in one of these 4 ways. These are just like the main 4: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Fight would be rage, anger, bullying, intimidation. It comes out as like projection, like I'm mad and it must be this other person's fault, right? Flight is panic, worrying, rumination, perfectionism. It's physical flight, like leaving, booking it out of town. It could even be ghosting. It's I'm getting out of this situation. I'm not dealing with the sensation, the feeling. Freeze is disassociation. It could even be anger as well, but that's is the numbness, the stuckness, the lack of mobility, unable to take that step forward. And then fawn is no boundaries, codependency, people pleasing. Basically, their strategy is I'm just going to like concede to whatever the needs of the people are around me, because I don't feel safe to honor my own. And all of these responses are birthed out of very real ways of trying to protect you. And so if we think about them as like, okay, our nervous system learned that this was actually a good coping tool for when our body is overwhelmed with a big emotion or really scary, dangerous situation. Just think about and get curious, when I'm feeling desperate, which one of these tends to pop up? Which archetype tends to pop up? And just in the moment, when you feel that desperation click in, like first acknowledge if you feel that you're in desperation, accepting it. But then, too, once you're in it, what nervous system response is coming in right now? What am I feeling into? My body automatically went there. It wasn't a conscious thought, so I automatically went there. Let's just get curious, like, ooh, I'm feeling a lot of flight energy. I'm feeling that dreamer. I'm wanting to fantasize and not take any action. I'm feeling that freeze. So just get curious about that instead of saying, I need my manifestation now, or I can't have this thing in life because of that. It's like, ooh, where is that coming from? What response is that pulling up for you?
Yeah. And from there, making sure to regulate and then get to the bottom of it.
Yes.
Through something as simple as the trigger DI or the unblock DI. God, that's what all of this work is. It's really, really investigating and peeling the layers to get to your authenticity.
It's so simple, but so in the moment, putting it into practice, I think can feel like, can I do that? Yes, you absolutely can. It's those little moments. So, okay. So, how do we get out of this state? We've said it throughout this episode, but just to lay it out for you guys super clearly: 1, accept that you're in it. You cannot heal what you don't see. So, are you headed to the wounded side of your archetype? Are you stuck in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn? Are you feeling less than? Are you feeling behind? Are you feeling in desperation? Acknowledge and accept that you're in it. Step one. Step two, this was something I added as well. Recognize the power you are giving away to this dynamic. So many times, I see this a lot like in when people are manifesting relationships. There's this feeling of like, I won't have a good life until then, or my life is empty or missing until then. Can we take a second and look at how much power we're giving this manifestation over our life? How do you start to look at that, Lacey? And how have you seen with other clients in the past or other examples that you've heard throughout the years when people are like giving so much power to this thing outside of them?
Well, gosh, I feel like that's one of the big blocks that really stands in people's way. They're allowing this sense that this external validation, when it comes through, they'll be happy, which is never the case. And to be quite honest, like from that state, you'll just never really manifest what you want. So I love that you have the second step as really acknowledging how much power you're giving to it, but to diffuse that power, the way that I would walk into it right away is I would go into worst case scenario. I would just diffuse it, pop the balloon. What are you so afraid of? Like it has nothing to do with this partnership coming through, this career coming through, this type of home coming through, this beauty thing coming through, like whatever your thing is that has nothing to do with that. Let's just pop the balloon and get right to the root of worst case scenario if this never happens. And then at that bottom space, I would look at, oh, fuck, what was that programming? That has nothing to do with my authentic self and who I am and how I operate. That's something I picked up along the way. Let's see where and why and how that has nothing to do with me. And that, I believe, when you understand that root, where you picked up this wounding, the shadow, the shame, that's when you have all the power back because you realize, whoa, this isn't me at all. This isn't what I desire at all. And I'll give myself as an example, like even when I was going through and so unconsciously being an actress because my mom had been a model and an actress. And of course, if I achieved that, I would finally be loved in the ways that I wasn't with 20-year-old parents who didn't know how to love themselves, let alone me, and the ways that a child needs, how to attune to me, any of that. So unconscious. But I did know, and I've always known that I was meant to, like we talked about, and this is even from an integrated place, I can say this, not even just from a dreamer status thing, because the status of it looks very different and the happiness of it for me. So I still knew from a young age there was just something about me that I was going to be recognizable, be influential. Like there would be something like that in my life. But going through my 20s, it was to be famous, to be loved by my 20-year-old parents, in all of the ways that I was neglected and abandoned from the attunement that I needed. However, when I was able to really get into my authentic self, let all of that stuff go, everything we're talking about in this episode, I did and have now accomplished and manifested everything I wanted. That being like a person of influence or impactful had nothing to do with ego. It was really wanting to be impactful in people's lives. And so achieving that looks so different from how I was calling it in my 20s, but I received it, right? So for the person sitting there that's like, oh, I'm really afraid to like name this energy, I'm even more afraid to look at the power I'm giving it and get down to the worst case scenario. Like that sounds really fucking scary because to most people, that sounds like I'm just throwing in the towel. This isn't going to happen for me. And so I just want to say that's not at all what you're doing in this process. And I'm a perfect example of that. The towel you're throwing in is this fantasy, whether you're the dreamer, whether you're the discerner, whether you're the empathizer. It's this fantasy you've made up that you haven't even made it up. In fact, society, your parents, your peers, media have made it up for you, that if you arrive at this particular thing or many things, you will be complete. And it's a sham because completion is your authenticity and operating from that place. That's where the universe dances with you. That's where the universe gives you everything you've ever wanted. So if you're sitting there so afraid to admit, to look at the power, to then go into the worst case scenario, look at the wound that was like, oh my God, this has nothing to do with me. This is beautiful because now you finally have a blank slate you're working from. Now you can come from your authenticity. And those things that you probably desired that were truthful, not exactly in the same sense of how they look to you in your fantasy, will start to come to you. So by doing these steps, you're not giving up. You're not throwing in the towel. In fact, you're getting closer to all of the things you truly desire, but from your true, authentic soul, what it really wants, what it really came here to get, without all of that programming and trauma and stories and the media, everything it picked up. What you're doing in this work is you're washing all of that away so you can get clear on who your authentic self is and work from that place to manifest all of those things you actually do desire.
One thing I want to highlight too about what you said is like when you were talking about feeling like you were supposed to have a big life and public success, right? It's like a very fine line difference between the way that you're saying it, which is like, I just had this feeling that it was going to feel like I know exactly what you're talking about. It's like you feel your aura having to hold a lot of space. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I just feel for some reason that I'm going to like hold a lot of space in some capacity. That feels authentic versus I want to have a big win in my career because then I'll get all the things I want. That's ego. It's
Mm-hmm.
not that you can't have your big dreams. You can have your big dreams, but just distill it down to, does this feel true and right for me? If you think about if you didn't have it, you wouldn't feel absolute panic. You'd be like, huh, that's weird if it doesn't happen because it feels like it's supposed to. But like, okay, I'm in surrender. We'll see what happens. And trusting that what is meant for you won't miss you versus I'm not complete if I don't have this.
Yeah, that's the desperate.
So just going back through how to get out of that state. So accepting it, recognizing the power you're giving in, and then go over to the worst case scenario. Understand, what assumptions are you making about the situation? What story are you telling yourself about what this means about who you are, your identity, all of those things. And then face that fear. Do the deep imagining and realize like, okay, even if this were to happen, I would be okay. It would be fine. And then you can start to see how your timing in life, especially when you're feeling behind in life, has worked out for you and can work out for you. So if you're looking back of all the times that you've manifested something and you wanted it sooner, but it got delayed or something else happened, there was some sort of blessing or integration or lesson that you needed before that next step. So be your own expander. Sometimes we need that extra time to simmer and sit with something before the next big thing comes in.
Yeah, to be on the same frequency. And so, for a more distilled way to say that, our self worth is in the same self worth alignment as the thing we're calling in. One thing I did want to say about these questions that we're asking ourselves, like, does this really align with me? Is this my authentic self? What is the worst case scenario? I don't believe, especially if we're just starting out, that we can ask these questions fully in the conscious mind, because the conscious mind is so much of the ego. It is so much of when I say ego, that's just programming to protect us. That's all ego is. And so I do highly, highly, highly advise that these questions are asked in the subconscious state in deep imaginings, because that's when you're really going to get to the truth. You're really going to see your authenticity. You really are going to face the worst case scenario. And even more, you're actually truly going to allow your subconscious imprintation to show you what the wounding is. That's just one little caveat I'd like to say, because I don't think a lot of people there who are sitting here going like, yeah, is this, authentic, asking themselves that stuff, that they're really going to get the right answers in the conscious state.
I keep thinking too of like when you go into the deep imagining and you can go into your subconscious so much deeper through hypnosis, it's almost like your bodily alert systems and coping mechanisms can just
Go offline.
relax.
Yeah.
Yes, you can hear the true you. It's really hard to hear the true you when you have all these protective barriers in the way. So that's why deeply dropping into that hypnosis is going to be huge.
Yeah, and letting your subconscious really tell you. Completely. I think it's imperative. Of course, if this work is layered for you now and you've been doing this for a really long time and you get the difference between conscious, subconscious mind talking, you can ask yourself these questions journaling in a conscious state, no problem. By now, you're starting to get the feel for TBM. Maybe you've heard about our workshops and you're interested in manifestation, but you just don't have the time or energy to sit down and do self-help work. We totally get it. In fact, that's why we created the Daily Practice, which is our massive library of self-hypnosis tracks that you can do anytime without having to jump into a workshop. We call these tracks our Deep Imaginings, or DIs. DIs are different than normal meditations because we designed them using a combination of self-hypnosis techniques, deep theta waves, EMDR-informed tools, and somatic experiencing. A fully loaded formula that is scientifically proven to help you clear your blocks and triggers on a subconscious level, giving you the power to actually create new neural pathways in your brain. So if your boss pisses you off, use our trigger DI. If you want to feel magnetic before a party or an important meeting, use the magnetic self DI. If you're feeling anxious or down on yourself or you need help making a decision, we've got a DI for all of these scenarios and more. You can get full access to the Daily Practice inside the Pathway membership, where you'll also get unlimited access to every workshop, tool, and offering from TBM. The tools in the Pathway membership will support you year-round, whether you're in the worst, a rock bottom, or second worst, a rut, or feeling good and you want to keep the magnetism going. In the Pathway, you'll effectively learn how to become your own manifestation coach, all for less than $1 a day. So even if you're not ready to start a workshop, join the Pathway and start rewriting your neural pathways now to create magnetism. Work through your triggers and get closer to your authentic magnetic self in order to manifest. Use our special code MAGNETIC, all caps, MAGNETIC, to receive $20 off your first TBM purchase. Again, that's all caps, MAGNETIC. Now back to the episode.
Okay, so we pulled some questions from the community so we can just go through some examples here. Dog paddling for manifestation. I have massive dog paddling energy right now with everything I'm trying to do, and it's clearly not coming through. What is the best way to just release this energy? What is recommended to help with dog paddling energy when your trust muscle is just so low? I've experienced a lot of dog paddling energy, but it's mostly all internal. A lot of anxiety about not having enough time, not doing the right thing for my manifestation to come through or to live the life that I want. Has anyone experienced this, and what do you recommend?
I think the steps we're talking about are really good first steps in this. The person who's going through this heavily is dealing with a tremendous amount of perfectionism, and that's deeper, inner child work, shadow work. It's a deeper process, but I do think to start to give someone a pressure release and to start to give some ahas and like, whoa, calm down are exactly the steps we're talking about.
I think this comes up a lot too with people who think, am I doing the work right? Did I follow the steps right? Did I do this in order? Like, what workshop should I do next? What DI do I need to do? Am I unblocking enough? There's so much desperation, dog paddling energy around doing the actual work. And I just want to state to anyone, your intuition knows what's best. You're going to know what workshop you need to do. You're going to know what you need to write on your list. And if you don't, guess what? You'll have tests and triggers, and then you'll reevaluate and get honest with yourself and restart the process again. But maybe you needed to write something from ego. You have to trust in your divine guidance that is within you, that true magnetic self that is already inside of you. I just really want to give licensing to people. Like, we have it step by step laid out, and of course go through and follow along that way. But if you want to go off course a little, or pick something up here and do something else there, or do a workshop in a different order, go for it. Trust yourself. just showing up every single day is going to make a difference.
And honestly, whenever I've felt in that state in the past, I like drop the workshops for a minute. I move straight to the daily practice and I just let what's coming up in front of me every day dictate what deep imaginings and journaling I do. So whatever triggers popping up, and when you do that for long enough, say a month, you start to hear your actual intuition. You refine and you get clear, and then I'll move into a workshop because I'll understand the difference between perfectionism versus listening to exactly what the universe is giving me every day to look at.
Such a good tip. Okay, this person has questions around regret. I found over the past few years, I really struggle with regret. It definitely keeps me stuck in a lot of ways and from moving forward, even moving forward with the challenge. I'm sure this is a block I can work through and unblocking, but it feels pretty big. I see a lot of younger people around me killing it at life, and I'm happy and excited for them. But at the same time, it seems to reinforce this regret. I suppose an adjacent regret feeling is learning about all this work now. If I just had this when I was 25, even 35, I can only imagine what my life would be now at 52. Has anyone else navigated this regret? And I would value from learning from your stories.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I think going into the community group and really sourcing out any of the other whys. But two stories come to my mind right now. Obviously, Martha Stewart, prior to starting her brand, was in finance and was successful with that. But that's a huge level. Like that's people who I used to have so many clients that were lawyers because that's the programming. If they were a lawyer, they were reputable, they were loved by their parent. You know, there's so many reasons why people become these professions that not at all their authentic self desires. Now, I have a friend that's a lawyer who loves being a lawyer. Like, this is her authentic self. You know what I mean? So there's a big difference. But, anyways, I look at my friends that were successful in law, but all they ever wanted to do was to pivot into a career that was their passion, right? And so, like I say this, I take Martha Stewart. She didn't start her brand until she was 50.
Mm-hmm.
And it must be so challenging to be in the wise category and just have constant reinforcement from media, from society, that you're potentially invisible, that it's too late in life, that you're coming up on retirement soon. All this jargon. It's just layers and layers of programming that have to be demystified. If you're in that space of regret, your greatest ammunition is going to be an obscene amount of fragment, full bridge expanders. It's what's going to take you to another level.
One thing that the desperation energetic can do, if you do all the steps that we're saying, where like you acknowledge it, you face the fear, you move through it, and then you're like, okay, I'm noticing this desperation come. Use it as mobilizing energy. Use it as like, okay, I'm feeling desperate. I feel like my back is against the wall, like the time is ticking. Use that as fuel. Great. Let me go find those expanders. Let me go launch that e-course I've wanted to launch. Let me go make that career pivot. Like whatever it is, use it as, okay, this is scary, but I'm going to move it from anxiety over feeling hopeless to anxiety of feeling anticipatory.
And motivated.
Yeah, excitement for what's coming next. So you can then be an expander to someone else who went through the exact same trajectory.
Yeah.
Okay, last one here. I've been feeling too much in dogpaddling energy attached to outcome with my manifestation. I've been doing letting go and worst case scenario, and it's helped a bit, but I'm still feeling stuck to move forward. I don't understand surrendering, and I'm just looking if I should continue doing the DIs or what else I might be missing here.
What do you feel?
I feel like, and I notice this happens a good amount, where it's almost like the perfectionism comes to the protocol. They're like, okay, I did letting go DI and worst case scenario. It feels like a checkbox. Like I almost feel this person's energy in their question where they're like, I did this, I did this, I did this. They want it handed on a silver platter. And the surrendering that they don't understand, sometimes it's surrendering to the state that you feel at the moment. It's surrendering to like, I feel really uncomfortable and I feel like things are not moving fast enough. That's not the truth, but I feel it. And I'm just going to acknowledge it and sit with it for a second instead of trying to like DI it away, or let's just sit with
what is like, do the feel your feelings DI.
Mhm.
Like that might be a huge thing. And also keep doing the DIs. Like if you're doing letting go, you're doing worst case scenario. We just had a process guest on who's talking about this, but it's like if you do the same DI for 60 days, you're going to get a different result every single day, right? One of the days you might not drop in all the way. The next day you have the most life profound unblocking moment. Consistency is so key. You're making a new neural pathway of trust with yourself. It's going to take time. It's not a one DI and it's all good.
Yeah, and I think another thing that people can understand, the energetic to me of surrender when we're talking in manifestation terms, it's that you're unblocked enough and you're expanded enough. And when I say expanded enough, I don't just mean that you have your roster of the different type of expanders surrounding you. It means that your trust muscle is strong. So this person has no trust muscle right now. They have not manifested the small things to the medium things to the bigger things to go, oh shit, when I do this, the universe always shows up. And that dog paddling energy is just pushing it away because when you're not in that level of worth, you're literally saying to the universe, I don't deserve this. I don't actually believe that I deserve this. And the antidote to it is to unblock enough, expand enough, and have a strong enough trust muscle. That's what surrender is. That's the magic dark when you're able to be like, here goes, like it's coming, like I'm in surrender, however it happens, the length it takes, I know it's coming. So I would definitely advise this person who has done the letting go and has done the this, it's like, what is your sense of trust muscle? Have you even set out in this work and looked at the little manifestations and brought them in to even learn what it feels like, that in between space between when you call something in and something comes in? This is where you learn to be in your power in those moments. So yeah, more expansion, more unblocking there, in my opinion.
One note I kind of just want to leave everyone off with here is like that desperation feeling can feel so overwhelming. I have definitely been in that state before where I'm like, it's almost like your brain wants to go into panic mode. I think the more that you can practice that grounding of the nervous system, whether it's with a safe DI or any of the ones in the calming section, the reset DI, like move your body, shake your hands, mobilize the energy out of you so you don't get stuck in that, like you said, the loop. Because if you can recognize, like, this is just a sensation I'm feeling, this is just a physical sensation I'm feeling. And if I can just calm my nervous system, I can figure out a solution through this, whether that's detaching from outcome, whether that's a creative solution to get out of a certain financial state or whatever it is. Allow your body to calm so then the true you can come back online.
Yes, I would say that's step one. Step one's recognizing. Step two probably is definitely going into parasympathetic, like finding your way back.
And I love to the idea of the trust muscle. Start to build your trust muscle in things that aren't the category you're manifesting in.
It's crazy. It's preposterous to start with the big stuff because you have no context, especially if you've been doing the Hicks work and the secret and stuff like that. You have zero context, truly, of what it feels like to be in full trust because you don't even know when those things did work out a little bit here and there for you, why and how. You have no context of it. So to me, when we say start with the small stuff so that you actually understand your personal patterning and that space between, that's what starts to give you licensing and power.
I'm so excited to see everyone's mini manifestation list after
Yeah,
this.
in the community group.
Yes, yes. And share in the community group. Be that expander. If you guys have ever felt in these energetics before, if you have felt desperation, what was your remedy or protocol that helped snap you back to your true magnetic self? Share how you got through it and what manifestations turned around on the other side so you can be expanders for other people who might be navigating that right now.
That is huge. That's charity. Like, that's giving back. If you can go into the community group and do that right now, especially different ages and different ethnicities and cultural backgrounds, if you can just get in there and expand others, I mean, that it's just, it would be so wonderful.
Mm, love that. We'll start a little circle in there. So all of the expansion stories, if you ever need a little pick me up, you can just go in there and find them.
Awesome.
Thank you, Lacy.
Thank you, Jessica. This is such a great topic to kick off the year.
All right, we'll see you all next week. I hope you all enjoyed that episode as much as we did. And if you're starting to get a feel for this to be magnetic manifestation process but aren't completely sold yet, let me point you to some of our free offerings. You can check out the expanded podcast episode called How to Manifest Anything You Desire, where Lacy, the founder, and I break down exactly what this process is all about. You can check out The Motivation, which is our testimonial library with thousands of testimonials of people who have manifested wild things using this process. Or you could check out our free quiz to find out what manifestation phase you were in, the rut, the rock bottom, the next level, or the magic dark, and how you can navigate. Enjoy! We'll see you next week.